Welcome back. I hope you got your lab exercise working and you had fun trying.
This video is brought to you by OppiePies Academy.
Let's take a few minutes and go over the code. Some of the code here is fairly dense, so you might want to watch this video more than once to make sure you get everything. So of course we started with our basic document structure, the HTML that underlies any document that's displayed on the web. If you remember way back in chapter 1 and 2, we talked about the basic document structure. We have a title tag for Irish Trains, and then we have some style information just to add the Irish Rail green and the Irish Rail orange to our document. So now we get into the JavaScript, and this is the heart of the application. So first, on line 17, we declare var XML HTTP. We're declaring the XML HTTP variable. That variable is global because you'll notice we're not declaring it inside any function. It's kind of floating just here inside the script element. Next, we have our window onload function. This is the function that runs when everything is rendered inside the browser window. So this is kind of our initialization for this particular application. So first thing we do is we use getElementById to get the btn getTrains element. That, of course, is the button that's labeled getTrainStatus that the user clicks to make everything happen. We add to that button an event listener, listening for a click event, and that click event calls the getTrainInfo function. That's below, and we'll go over it in a second. The XML HTTP variable is then initialized as an XML HTTP request object. That gives it the power to talk to the Irish Rail server behind the scenes. We also define an onReadyStateChange function. That means when we get information from the Irish Rail server, we're going to run the receiveInformation function that you can see starts on line 33. So getTrainInfo, the next function, runs when the user clicks the button. There we open the connection to the Irish Rail server. Notice we're using the same API we used in Python. We're simply getting this XML information that's got the actual Irish Rail train information. That's kind of an important point. You can access APIs from almost any language or any environment. It doesn't matter what language you're using, the information you get from the API and the way you interact with the API is actually going to be the same. So here we use the Irish Rail API, and you'll remember that if we take this API and we paste the URL into the browser, we can actually simply see here the raw XML that's returned by the Irish Rail API. So this is the raw XML that's received by our program that we're going to have to parse. The XML http.send command simply sends the data to the server. All right, so now here's the heart of the program, and this is where the densest code is. This is the receiveInfo function. I'm going to make the actual code just a drop smaller to make this a little easier to read. There we go. So now, first thing we're going to do when we enter this function, remember this function is called when we receive information from the server. So we want to make sure the information we're receiving from the server says that processing is done, in other words, the ready state is 4, and the XML HTTP status is 200, meaning we didn't get, for example, a 404, which means page not found. So this gives us the best chance of knowing that the information we got is what we expect. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take the information we received from the server, and we get that by going into XML HTTP response XML document element. So that essentially takes all of this XML that we received and puts it into a variable called the XML. From there, we've got to get information about all the individual trains. So notice I use the XML, get elements by tag name, object train positions. Now, all of these object train positions nodes are now stored as an array. so we can loop through them. So each train has its own object train positions node. We're essentially putting all of those here into a variable called trains. We then create our output, and we're creating our output in a table, so I use the variable out, O-U-T. Now we loop through all of the trains in the XML. We get the train code, direction, and message. And we get those from the train code, direction, and public message nodes of the XML. So there you can see we've got the train code, the public message, and the direction. In reality, we could have gotten more information from here if we wanted to. We could have gotten the train latitude and the train longitude. I didn't use that for the purpose of this particular app, but we certainly could have and done something, for example, with mapping if we wanted to. Maybe that's a little hint of things to come. All right, so we've got our code, direction, and message, and now we put that into table data cells so we can have an individual row. Let's go ahead and actually add our TR here. So obviously we're going to need that. Okay, good to go. Then we close the table after we've gone through all the trains, and we take that result and we put it into the result div, which is right here, and we use the inner HTML property. So basically we're building a table, and then we're putting all the data into the actual div for result. So that div for the result receives the table once we get the information from the server. The final challenge was to do a little CSS to make this look more attractive, and I did assign for you to do that on your own. So there you've done your first somewhat complex web application. Hope you enjoyed the experience. We'll see you in the next chapter.